Well, it is November 11th. If you've been keeping up with any of my most recent uploads, you may be interested to know, if you couldn't tell already, that dirt working season is over. And plowing season has begun. So, yeah, first snow of the year, second day of plowing. And yeah, it's going all right. Dealing with the typical first snow of the year struggles, refamiliarizing myself with running a snow blade and just getting comfortable with all of the basics again. So I have an idea. I don't know if it's a good idea, but it's an idea about doing a couple videos. Wow, I'm really going a lot. I'm sorry about that. A couple videos about plowing, just talking about plowing, kind of fundamental ideas about plowing, and we'll see how it goes. I have no idea. I haven't really tried to prepare anything for this. It's just something I have felt like sharing. I don't know what kind of interest there might be in this, but yeah, I spend a lot of time plowing. I think a lot about plowing. I enjoy plowing, and so why not share some of my thoughts on plowing, some of my techniques and stuff. Yeah, so that's what's going on here. We'll see how it goes. If I fumble around too much, you'll probably never see this. But yeah. So this being the first plow of the year, as I already mentioned, there's just a lot of refamiliarizing myself with things. I'm definitely not doing any of the finer points of plowing yet. That comes later in the year. Right now, along with just getting comfortable again and getting to where I don't have to think about the basics, I'm also trying not to tear up people's driveways. All of the driveways we plow are gravel driveways, and a lot of those are finished with a premium finish gravel that's pretty expensive, like a 3/4 inch minus crushed D1, whatever you want to call it. And people don't particularly appreciate when you plow all of their very expensive gravel out into the wild blue yonder. For instance, right here in front of me, I'm currently plowing driveway, the parking area, but right about here, everything in front of me is lawn. And so I come in here, and if I'm doing a really bad job, that pile of snow I just pushed is full of gravel. That's not only a waste of gravel, but it's a bunch of work for them in the spring to go out there and rake it up. So we do our best not to do that. We put the feet on our plow down really low at the beginning of the year here, but even with the feet down low, if you're not careful, you can really gouge gravel out and cause a lot of unnecessary damage. And along with not wanting to destroy people's driveways, you also want to build a base. You do want to get to the point where you're out of the gravel and you can have a plow on that doesn't have feet, where you can scrape good and hard and do a really nice premium job. But we're not there yet, so we try to plow enough that moving around and walking around the yard is comfortable, but leave enough snow that we're going to be working on building our base for the rest of the year. And then the other big thing to be thinking about with everything that I do is, am I doing anything that's going to hurt future plowing? This snowfall is not a big problem. It's only, I don't know, it varies depending on what area of our zone we're in, but this area here probably has 5 to 6 inches, and so it's not a big deal. It's not like a foot of super heavy wet snow. If it was a foot of super heavy wet snow, then I would have to be even more particular about how I plow, because when conditions are like that, if you do things wrong, you really can, your past self can be a tremendous detriment to your future self when you're coming into this driveway in February trying to plow snow and everything's choked off because you didn't plow that first heavy wet snowfall properly. So yeah, this snowfall isn't a real big deal. I could pretty much do whatever I want with this snowfall and it wouldn't hardly have an impact on the rest of the year. But it's still something I just try to be mindful of. Push things back far enough. Just, you know, the basic idea with that is that you want to be as wide open as possible to begin with, because every inch you give up now, you won't get back later on in the year. So yeah, I guess those are the basic things to be looking at and thinking about, but there's also not hitting stuff. That's important. And in the back of my mind, not in the forefront because I'm still too preoccupied with all of the basics, but I do want to start thinking about plowing patterns and just overall the different systems that I use to be super efficient. Yeah, that I think will be a topic for later videos, mostly because right now, at the beginning of the year, it's very difficult to have I don't know what I'm trying to say. I am not well practiced in it at this stage of the year, so it's difficult to talk about something that is I'm trying to remember. But the basic gist of that idea is that you're not doing things, you're not plowing in particular patterns and whatnot that produces a lot of extra work where you got to like go back and clean up things behind you and make extra passes and drive, you know, like if you were to plow one portion and then a different portion and then have to drive across something you already plowed to get to something else you didn't plow, you know, you want to try to clear each zone as you move through the yard and tie everything together in a way where you're just not doing unnecessary work is the basic idea, but obviously it can get much more complicated than that. And yeah, and also you got to really pay attention to new hazards. I was in a driveway earlier that I've been plowing for a really long time, and all of a sudden there's a trailer sitting out back where there's never been one before, you know, and I mean that would be a really difficult one to miss, but it's an example of something you have to pay attention to, because I'm going to be plowing these driveways for the rest of the year. And so if I come in and I see something and I notice something that's something I got to look out for, I got to try to make mental notes of all this stuff, because we plow so many driveways. If I was to try and stop and like document every little thing, I would spend more time doing that than I would spend plowing. So you just got to try to have a mental awareness of all of it. So I'll try to think of anything else there might be to mention. But in the meantime, I don't know, plowing montage? guess this would be a pretty prime example of kind of what I was talking about, where you don't see. I've pulled all this snow out of here. I would have been better, rather than plowing that section in front of us, that little pie shape out there. I would have been better plowing in and then coming in, skirting along this tree, coming in here, and then actually dealing with all of this stuff behind me, this shed area, this whole step area. Get all of this pulled out, push all of that out there, because now what's happening is I'm carrying all of this stuff into a zone that's already cleaned, and it's very difficult to push this snow and get it out of the way without, you see how I just keep leaving these trails of snow? And you don't want to leave that. You have to clean it up, but because this area's already been cleaned, it's extra. You're redoing something that would have been avoidable. If I would have just come in here, cut this line in first, right here, punched in, stayed in there, cleared that, back drug that, and that, spun around and pushed it all out here, then I could have come right here and finished plowing this wedge, and all of that extra snow would have been part of that, and it would have saved, not like a tremendous amount of time, but when you're trying to do mass production, even if that only saved me 1 minute, if I can avoid doing that and have every job that I do as efficient as possible, those minutes, they add up, If you think I average 30 driveways is a pretty decent day. It's kind of that's a fairly normal day. That's a reasonably productive day. And so if you think about, if you were to do something on every job that costed you 2 minutes, it's like, oh, well, 2 minutes isn't that much. But it's like, yeah, but if I do 30 jobs, then that's an hour I've wasted. And then when you try to extrapolate that out with the number of jobs you're doing, if it's, say, a 12-hour day and you waste an hour, that's, that equates to like 3, 4, 5 jobs. That's 3 or 4 or 5 people who could be free of the snow burden sooner, And sometimes that difference is what will cost you having to pull out of a zone prematurely and waste time having to go back to it at a later time. So here is a driveway. It's really funny how these work concerning the advanced level pattern mechanics and deciding how to approach a driveway. It's interesting how the ones that have the most potential for high efficiency are also the ones that have the most potential for you to really screw stuff up and for it to take way longer than it should. So, quite the little dichotomy there of I really enjoy the challenge of coming up with a good plowing pattern for certain things, but that is also tempered with the high risk of making an attempt that could cost you a lot of time. And I suppose that the majority of that boils down to awareness. Because a guy could come in here and just blindly push wherever he, just sees snow and just pushes it whatever, however, and and it might have no consequence for him. He might not care. He might be perfectly content sitting here with his tunes on, just pushing snow willy-nilly any old direction, and not trying to combo different things together to create a seamless, you know, thing where you can keep moving and keep snow moving, but not work yourself into a corner where you got to all of a sudden do a bunch of cleanup. Like on that last job, what I was pointing out, that's fairly inconsequential. That's a small area, but imagine if it was that same shape of a yard, but things were much larger, then all of a sudden that mistake I made could have costed me not 1 minute, but, you know, 10 minutes or something. So there's a lot of, you get into, like, this yard is fairly large, and it's got multiple different components. You've got three different large parking areas, two different snow pushes, which are, for me, they're not as big of a deal. A lot of people will have snow pushes because when you're operating a truck, a snow push is really beneficial. But with the Bobcat, a snow push is almost completely unnecessary. But anyway, so he's got two snow pushes. They're just worth mentioning, not worth worrying about. And then this big loop driveway. So you got the three big parking areas and a loop driveway to kind of work together. And if you mess something up and you clear one area prematurely, when the leftover snow from a different area is going to trickle over into that other area, I mean, you could really work yourself into a corner that you're going to spend a lot of time getting yourself out of. And leaving areas undone. Like I'm right here, I could have probably just spun around where I spun around up there and left this, but by cleaning this up, I won't have to come back to it. Not that that's a big deal because it's right here at the mouth of the driveway, so I would be driving by it again anyways, but I always prefer when I leave the driveway to be in a cut that I don't have to stop and pull out of. That's always a preference. So little rough out here on the perimeter of the driveway, or whatever we want to call this section. This is one of those snow pushes I was talking about right here. Do I risk messing with it? I believe the obvious answer is absolutely. Come on, brake! Brake! There we go. It's still not very cold out. Once the temperature gets much lower, that thing would have shattered, you know, just pretty much as quick as I touched it. Wow. Being a real klutz. I think that's fine. Was I saying anything? I don't think I was. If you're unfamiliar, these Bobcats with this style of control have a minor delay in it, but it's only minor if you're not operating at the limit. If you are operating at the limit, then that delay can, it can really, you gotta stay on top of it. Got to be thinking out ahead of every move you make, because even though it's only, a 1/10 of a second, this Bobcat is so flippin' fast, that 1/10 of a second can sometimes be up to like 6 feet. So having a 6-foot reaction time is not good. You don't, do not want that. Hearing a rattling, but I'm not sure. It is not a normal rattling, but sometimes it's as simple as the temperature changing and the snow coming off of, there's snow packed on all this stuff, and it could have been muting something, and now that it's melted off, that piece can rattle. I'm fairly certain it's the washer on the plow foot, but you always want to keep an eye on stuff like that. Sometimes that jingling sound can be a forewarning that something's going to fall off of your plow at any moment. Now you see there, that was a bad one. I really, did not do a good job there. It's bound to happen a certain amount. If I were to take the time to make sure that I never, ever, ever did that, I would never get anything done. We are taking care of way too many people to be able to go that slow. We'd have to charge an astronomical fee just to operate like that, because we'd be going so slow you'd never make any money. Certainly wouldn't mind making some videos talking about shoveling too. I know that might seem like a mundane topic, but there's a lot that can be said about shoveling too. I have certainly done my fair share of shoveling. Not my usual bungee setup for my shovel, but I can't seem to locate my bungee from last year. Ultimately, I want to find one of those tool clips, like you see a lot of people have them in their shops, where it's like mounted on the wall and you can just push the handle right in and it just kind of clamps into it. So I'd like to find one of those that's strong enough that I could trust it to not lose my shovel, and mount it on the roof of the Bobcat where the handle would be right here, so that when I get out of the Bobcat I could just grab the handle, pop it out of that clamp, do my deal, and pop it back in when I'm done. Because One, I don't like having to go around the back of the Bobcat to get the shovel. Later in the year when we're doing spring cleanouts, a lot of times I'm trying to get my shovel and there's so much snow on both sides of the Bobcat, I have to like climb over the tracks or the tires or whatever I'm using just to get to the shovel. I didn't notice this section here. This is new. See, this is what I'm talking about. Now I have this area, which admittedly, like I said, historically I didn't do this, but he's clearly got it cleaned up pretty nice. He's got the table tilted on its side. The fire ring is pushed out of the way. So I would imagine he'd like me to keep this cleared out so that when he's out here he could just pull his fire ring out into this area, stand the table back up, and have a nice fire on the weekend. So definitely don't want to deprive him of that. So this time I will push this excess snow just off to the side here, but next time I come in here I will have to remember to when I'm doing those initial laps around the loop on that first one, I would do well to come in, push past it, spin around and back drag everything out here so that all this snow just gets pushed out and around with all of the other snow in the loop. Don't fall in the hole. careful here. I've had a couple of these, even though it's only a few inches of snow that shed off the roof. Because of the temperature it was when it shed off and the temperature that it is now, it was hard enough that the plow hooked it and it actually tried to pull me into the building a little bit. Definitely do not want to be doing that. This is another prime example of a driveway I have a hard time not tearing up. This is 1 inch washed rock in here, which is it never binds down and really becomes a good hard surface. That 1 inch wash just kind of sits on the surface of the driveway and rolls around, and it never really settles. And so it's very difficult to not plow giant piles of it into the woods. I really try not to, but there's only so much I can do. I know I do something like that, but I think I'm supposed to do that portion when I do the other one. Sometimes it's hard to remember the pattern. You know, a lot of these I have well-established patterns for, but because there's so flippin' many of these driveways, I can't always remember them all perfectly. And another element of the whole pattern situation is that it's also dependent on the snow. You know, how much snow, what kind of snow, you know. Oof. Bad rough spot there. I need to be more patient and roll over it gently. There used to be a Connex sitting here, and that rough spot that I keep going over is the little ramp that they had so that they could drive their four-wheelers and stuff into the Connex. And they took the Connex out, but they didn't get rid of the hump. I need to shovel these steps before I get too carried away. Ooh. Waited too long. Gotta be careful, them little wire frames don't stand a chance against me. Hopefully they don't mind me burying their hammock. I don't think they're going to be using it anymore. Oh, yeah, see, I did it again.